It's funny that the question implies you haven't started doing it yet. Most organizations are already in the deep end of the pool. They're just trying to catch up. But if you're taking a mindful, logical approach to instituting it, there are really 4 things you need to concern yourself with. The first is the nature of the work. Does it lend itself to remote work? Second thing are some of the processes, the HR processes, the nuts and bolts of getting the work done. There's the issue of, are we all clear on the expectations? Because none of that happens without that. And then there's a technology component, which is, do we have the tools to do the job? But I think it starts with the nature of the work to be done.
Yeah, so let's just start there. So, as the world turns, as we get further down the road, we're going to find more and more types of work being done remotely. But if you're starting and you're being mindful about it, be really careful about this, because some kinds of work lend itself more easily, especially if you're just getting started, like work that's very task-focused and very insular or very process-driven. I have this piece. You have this piece, another person has a third piece. Truly individual contributor type of work.
Sales organizations, for example, where you've got 3 or 4 salespeople, but they're all kind of doing their own thing. And there isn't a lot of interdependencies.
The interdependencies then, of course, are back to the home office and their support folks, and we want to make that all work. We'll get to talk about that in just a sec. But yeah, sales organizations have been doing this for a long time, and the reason they've been able to do it, even without some of the new tools and technologies we have now, is because their work was so relatively independent. So a sales organization, some people doing some kinds of coding or other sorts of project management work can often be done, again, if their work it can be clearly defined. I want to go to the third thing that you said, which was about clear expectations, because that's where we need to go next. We need to make sure that if the work is clearly understood and mutually understood, and people are doing it pretty well now, if they're on site when they go home, for example, probably still going to be okay. But there's a whole other level of expectations we need to put in about not just what the work is, but how we're going to do the work, what we're expecting of folks in terms of their communication with others in the organization as well as with us as the boss. But there's other sort of more hard skill process stuff we need to think about too.
Yeah, if you're in HR, for example, you need to be thinking about, how do we do performance reviews? Are our coaching processes equal? Not the same, because it's going to be different when somebody's in the office versus when they're not, but are they equal? Do people have the same opportunity for reward and recognition, for promotion? All of those HR processes need to take into account the way people are actually working.
And in terms of like performance reviews, for example, if that's what you're doing in your organization, you want to make sure that you've prepared those remote leaders, those long distance leaders, for how to do those reviews at a distance, which is different, of course, at some level than being in the office.
Absolutely. And then the fourth thing, which sounds like it would be higher up the list, but it's really not, because form follows function, right?
Yep.
Which is, if you know what the work is supposed to do and you know what's expected of people and you've got the human processes in place, now it's time to think about what tools do we use to get the job done. And that may require investing in new tools, but more likely it's going to involve creating processes and best practices and team norms and rules.
And expectations
around what do you use when. And if you look at the technology as simply the way to support those other things, it becomes far less intimidating and a much more rational kind of process.
Yeah, and this comes everything from simply, let's make sure everyone that's working from home's got a webcam. And earlier today we were using a new wireless speaker to do conference calls. Just think about, this could be software stuff, but it could be just what do people need to really be successful when they're not working where they used to be?
Yeah, so if you get back to where we started, which is what are the things we need to think about, ideally you'd like to do this before the boat's in the water, right? Because it's hard to fix then. If you are thinking about instituting telework and remote teams, as early in the process as possible, take a look at these things. If not, you're going to have to stop and do an assessment and just figure out where are you, what do you need to adjust, and what needs to remain the same in order to be successful, and you'll be fine.